Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. The New York Giants opened their season in incredibly disappointing fashion on Sunday with a 21-6 loss to the Washington Commanders. Third season in a row, actually the third season in a row that the Giants have not scored a touchdown in a season opening game. And here to help me break it down is Big Blue Views Tony DelGenio. Tony, morning. Thank you for hopping on.
Good morning, Adam. Happy to be here.
I wrote this last night, Tony. All this optimism, all the good vibes, everything that felt good about the Giants or better about the Giants, it all just went poof last night. It just vanished. It all went up in thin air because it felt and it looked, and in the locker room after the game, it sounded like the same old that we've been dealing with for the better part of 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, it sure looked that way on the field. They were more competitive yesterday than they've been in the last two openers, but still the same result. An offense that can't move the ball and can't score.
Offense that can't move the ball and can't score, largely because the offensive line couldn't open holes in the run game, couldn't keep Russell Wilson comfortable. Quarterback play that couldn't rise above the difficulties around him, which is something we've been talking about for years and years and years, and had kind of hoped we had gotten by with the new quarterback room. Not enough playmakers on the outside. Malik Neighbors is still Malik Neighbors, but I don't know who else you throw the football to at this point. And on the defensive side of the ball, a tremendously hyped defense, but one that still gave up 432 yards overall, 220 yards rushing, and I know a lot of that is Jaden Daniels on scrambles, and couldn't get off the field on second and long and third and long situations when they had the Commanders in vulnerable spots. Still couldn't make plays, couldn't create any sort of dynamic game-changing play. So much of the same old.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about it more, but I think part of the failure on defense, you have to tip your hat to Jaden Daniels, who's I think great at keeping plays alive and things like that. He's I won't say he's unique, not after watching that Baltimore Buffalo game last night, which was unbelievable. But quarterbacks like that create problems for defenses, and so I am inclined to give the defense a little bit of a pass. They only gave up 21 points, and Washington only scored less than 21 points, I think, 4 times last season. So they didn't play that well in the ways that you suggested, but to me, I think to me, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the blame is on the offense, and as you say, especially the offensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, this game was not on the Giants' defense. You would have loved to have seen a game-changing play, a strip sack, an interception that created a scoring opportunity or turned into points or something like that. But as you said, it was the Giants had given up 14 points until midway in the fourth quarter. The defense played well enough, although not dominant, but they played well enough to give the Giants a chance to win that game. But again, offensively, just not nearly good enough. And Tony, I don't know what it is about these Brian Daboll coached Giants, but not only have they scored only 12 points in the last 3 season openers, if you go back to the Tennessee game in 2022 where they won with a second half comeback, they've scored 6 points in first halves total of the 4 Brian Daboll games. It's just, it's unfathomable how poorly they begin seasons with a head coach who is supposed to be. He got this job because of offense. It's just unfathomable that they can't do better at the beginnings of seasons. I don't know if you saw the stat. They're the first team since the 1940 to 42 Detroit Lions not to score a touchdown in a season opener 3 years in a row. It's just stunning. Just your thoughts. We'll just start with a generic thought from you on the offense.
Yeah, and I don't claim I can explain it. I remember Daboll's first opener where they looked kind of pathetic in the first half against Tennessee, but then they came out in the second half and they did move the ball in the second half, and so I thought, okay, well, this is okay. It takes time to figure out what the other team is doing. You don't know your guys that well yet, and so on and so forth. But I don't know. This team, they just. When I watched them yesterday, I don't think I even got a feel for what their plan was on offense, and how did they see themselves sustaining drives and putting points on the board. I'm just not sure what they're trying to do, and in addition to the fact that they're they're not using all the guys on the field, and we can talk more about this. But why is Darius Slayton the second starting receiver if you're never going to throw the ball to him? And my personal question, and I realize not everyone will agree with this, but my question is, why at this point is Theo Johnson the starting tight end in that offense? I don't think he's ready yet to be that. And so. Yeah, those are questions I have in addition to the number one question, which is and always seems to be the offensive line.
Absolutely. I think that there's so many places to go. Let's talk about that offensive line. Of course, no Andrew Thomas yesterday, but that is not the only issue. Obviously, James Hudson signed in the offseason to be the swing tackle, and we all gave Joe Shane credit for finally moving on from the Josh Azudu as backup left tackle plan, which didn't work for 2 years. Give him credit for signing a guy who is an actual swing tackle, has played both sides, has a decent amount of NFL experience, and should be competent. And Hudson was awful on Sunday. I think Pro Football Focus had him with giving up 8 pressures in 45 pass blocking snaps, had a critical penalty that killed a Giants scoring drive when they were still within 8 points. Just not a good performance, but it goes beyond Hudson. The interior of the offensive line, John Runyon wasn't good. John Michael Schmitz wasn't good. Greg Van Roten wasn't good. And it's disturbing because you just don't know. Evan Neal was inactive, which tells you, everybody's going to say, oh, why don't you put Evan Neal in the lineup? It tells you what the Giants thought of the summer that Evan Neal had, that he did not get a uniform on Sunday. So don't look for Evan Neal to be a potential answer. The Giants plainly appear to be done with Neal. But with that said, I just don't know, what the answer is. Hopefully it gets better when Andrew Thomas is there. But I'll just say one more thing, Tony. I thought it was plainly, absolutely clear that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka don't think they can get movement with their offensive line. With a 1st and goal at the Washington 1, the first thing they did was come out with kind of a trick play with Marcus Bowe as an eligible wide receiver And I don't know if Marcus Bowe was the intended receiver on that play or not. We couldn't tell because it was on the opposite end of the field from where the press box is. But they come out with a trick play. They throw the ball 2 out of 3 times from the 1 yard line. And it was plainly clear that they didn't think they could get the movement they needed from their offensive line. And I don't know how you fix it at this point.
Yeah, and it's so they had, I think, 2 drives where they had first downs at the 3 or something like that. 2 separate drives with first downs inside the 3, and couldn't get a touchdown on either one. And as you say, then resorting to trick plays right away. And so I think that speaks to the offensive line, and I certainly agree with you about James Hudson, but that doesn't bother me so much as long as Andrew Thomas comes back in the not too distant future. And of course, until it happens, we don't know that it's going to happen. And until it happens, we don't know whether he'll be effective. But at least we know what their intentions are, right? For left tackle, and if things go well, they'll have a very, very good left tackle coming back there at some point. Hopefully, not too much longer. I think, to me, the much bigger concern is the interior offensive line, because, for several reasons. First of all, they don't really have a plan B for the interior offensive line. You can always throw in Aaron Stinney, or you could throw in Austin Schlottman instead of John Michael Schmitz or something like that. But again, that's not, you wouldn't do that and expect to see much better performance. Those are both journeyman players.
Right.
And the thing I think that's very concerning is, with this particular quarterback, that could turn out to be a real weakness for the offense every week, because Russell Wilson is short by today's quarterback standards. And if you have the interior offensive line collapsing on him, he's not someone who could see over that and get a pass out quickly. He needs some room there to operate. And so I could imagine that if the IOL plays like that for a couple more weeks, that could be kind of the proximate cause of them making the change to Jackson Dart, somebody who at this point maybe is more mobile than Wilson is, somebody who's taller than Wilson is, quicker than Wilson is right now. I didn't think Wilson played well, but I thought he wasn't given a whole lot to work with, either in protection or in the game plan, to be honest.
I felt like, you mentioned the game plan, and you mentioned, not knowing exactly what it looked like the Giants wanted to do. And it reminded me, I used to feel like this when Jason Garrett was the offensive coordinator. I used to feel like the Giants were sort of throwing darts at the wall. It's like, okay, this didn't work, let's try that. We haven't used this play in the playbook, so let's try it. We haven't, maybe we'll just go no huddle, or maybe we'll just try all passes, or maybe we'll try all runs. It's like, what is our philosophy? What are we trying to be? And maybe it's as simple as, you can't establish what you want to be when you can't block. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's that simple, that you can't show anybody what it is that you'd really like to be when you hand the ball to your running backs and you average 2 yards a carry because there's no place to go. Maybe it's that simple, because I do think Mike Kafka is a good play caller. But I was screaming yesterday for, what are the kinds of things we saw in the preseason that worked? Some screen passes, something to the running back, throw a little screen. Those kinds of things worked over and over, and the Giants executed them really well in the preseason. We never saw any of that. But again, it's the offensive line, but it's also, we talked about, we're talking about Russ, and we're talking about Jackson Dart. And how many years have we talked about the Giants quarterback play being an issue maybe not being the biggest issue on a week in and week out basis, but quarterback play not being good enough to lift anybody, to play above any of the chaos. And I think that's what we saw again on Sunday. Russ wasn't terrible. I can't think of, well, I can think of one or maybe two plays where I was like, what is he actually doing on that play? Where is he throwing the ball? But it was he's not playing well, but he's also not being given a whole heck of a lot of a chance either.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And
So
he played.
I'm not sure where what the Giants do at this point.
Yeah, he played the same team last year, and naturally, the Commanders are not the same team this year that they were last year. They've made additions on the defense, but he was perfectly fine against this team last season, and he was throwing the ball deep against this defense last year as a Steeler, and doing so successfully. He threw the winning touchdown pass to George Pickens with a little over 2 minutes left to go. But yesterday everything was short, and he hardly went deep at all. I think he went deep maybe once in the entire game, and everything was either behind the line of scrimmage or within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And once and of course that I think is dictated by the offensive line not being able to hold up. But once you as a defense establish that the opposing offense doesn't have the time to go deep on you, then you can just keep on playing things tight, and you know that you're probably not going to pay for it because you're going against a team that's not going to give the quarterback enough time to do anything different. So I think after a while, probably by halftime, they probably knew this is all we have to do to keep them from doing much in this game.
Absolutely. I do want to apologize to our viewers quickly because I know that it looks like our connection is sort of going in and out just a little bit. That I guess is the risk of dealing with hotel room internet connectivity. So we will keep plowing ahead here, doing the best we can, and I do apologize for occasional interruptions. Anyway, Tony, I guess we have to talk about. It certainly didn't help anybody's mood that Daniel Jones went, I think, 22 out of 29 with 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown yesterday, and the Colts put up 33 points. Daniel Jones did his best. I'm turning into Saquon Barkley, and I'm going to embarrass that team from New Jersey that just let me go on Sunday. And dear God, if he keeps doing that, it's just, I really like Daniel Jones, but I don't want to live through that again.
Well. Here's my question for you. What do both the Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones situations have in common, other than that might explain how they played better when they went to another team? Well, Saquon went to the Philadelphia Eagles, the team that has arguably the best offensive line in football, and Daniel Jones went to the Indianapolis Colts, which, for all of their other problems, they have one of the better offensive lines in football, right? And they're good in the interior with Quentin Nelson and so on. And I saw a couple of highlights of Daniel Jones yesterday. I didn't get to watch anything significant about that game, so I don't know whether he was getting great protection or not. But the fact is that quarterbacks can do a lot with good protection as long as you have a couple of decent receivers out there. And likewise, Saquon Barkley, when you watch him with the Eagles, he looks so much different than he looks when he was with the Giants, because he's getting the ball as an Eagle, and he's already like 5 yards downfield before any defender lays a hand on him, if even then, you know. Whereas with the Giants, first contact was usually almost right at the line of scrimmage, and so you know, I think so much of the offensive problems can be traced back to the offensive line. I don't want to say everything can, but I think so much of it can, and and I feel like you're seeing that in the play calling that the Giants are doing. That they realize that they don't have what they need, maybe, and so they're calling a very conservative offense, and it's just a shame because you know, you see what some of these players can be when
Mhm.
there's time for them to get the ball and create, and if this offensive line continues this way, then I don't really see things changing for the rest of the season. I don't care how good a head coach you are. If the offensive line is that bad, you're not going to do anything. I mean, look at the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions lost, was it at least two of their star offensive linemen, I believe, this year, and that team had trouble moving the ball against Green Bay yesterday. Now, Green Bay,
Mhm.
admittedly, you know, is a contending team, and with the addition of Micah Parsons, even more so. But I think I haven't seen the Lions' offense look that pitiful in quite some time. You know, and does it have something to do with the offensive line? Maybe.
Absolutely. And Tony, I had this thought that I just have to mention, and I know it's not going to happen. At least I have to pray that it doesn't happen. But can you imagine the implosion of the Giants fan base if we get a Saquon Barkley versus Daniel Jones Super Bowl someday?
You know what? Well, Saquon has already gotten his Super Bowl, so you know, but I'd be happy for Daniel Jones if he got his Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, I mean, he didn't, you know, he was part of his own demise in New York, but there's no question that the team that they gave him was not a team you could do a lot with. So you know, I'll give the guy credit, and again, to his credit, in the press conference after the game, he he said nothing bad about anyone. You know, he never says that, he never has
Mhm.
anything bad to say about the Giants, and so yeah, give the guy some credit. He made the mistake of hiring agents who held out for a $40 million a year contract, which turned everybody against him. But I don't know of any NFL player who wouldn't do the same thing, you know, and so. Or let's say most NFL players would do the same thing if they were in a position where they thought
Mhm.
they held the card. So, you know, good for him if he has a good season in Indianapolis.
Absolutely. Tony, the only other thing is spinning forward, obviously, week 2 against the Dallas Cowboys. Um, on paper, maybe that's a more winnable game for the Giants than the Commander should have been, although I should have known better to pick the Giants to win week 1. I just should have known. I should have known better, but that might be a more winnable game. But you could tell from the locker room, you could tell from the long faces, you could tell from the sort of stunned, I can't believe I'm talking about this reaction again when we had a minute to talk to Darius Slayton, that that we talked about all those good vibes, that they went away in a hurry, and that the Giants are like, I can't believe we're here again. Um, but it is only one game. It is just, one of 17. So the problem is, and we will be examining a lot of this at Big Blue View. The problem is going to be, is what we saw fixable? I still have to believe that given an opportunity, the Giants can play decent offense. Um, I still have to, so I don't know. I mean, are you at that after one game? Are you at that point where you're convinced that this is just going to be another long year for the Giants?
Um, I am not there yet, So if the Giants get Andrew Thomas back soon, and if he looks like the old Andrew Thomas, which is no guarantee when you're coming back from Lisfranc surgery, then I feel like, okay, I mean, I don't think Jermaine Illuminor had a good day on the other end of the line, but I think overall he's a good, solid offensive tackle for them. And so if you have him playing at the way he can play, and Andrew Thomas playing the way he can play, then I think that gives them some hope for the offensive line. I don't know that I have any. I mean, the interior offensive line played well at times last year, and so there were games where Greg Van Roten was good. There were games where John Runyon was good last year. So I think what you're going to see from the interior is just maybe an inconsistent performance from week to week. The guy that really worries me in the interior, and Greg Van Roten is gone after this year, or if not sooner than that. John Runyon probably will be gone after this year because I think this is the last year of his contract. The guy that worries me is John Michael Schmitz, who just, I don't know, to me does not look like he can be a starting NFL center. And I don't know that I've ever come away from a Giants game saying, wow, John Michael Schmitz was great today. And, he always seems to be getting beat. He always seems to have trouble opening up holes. And I just, when you have that, I think it's really difficult to fix things. But can I just say one thing though is that we talked mostly about the offense. I don't know if you want to move to the defense or just end this quickly, but I've got to say, at least we have Abdul Carter, right? Because
Yes,
for a guy
yes.
playing his first game, I thought he looked really, really good yesterday.
He did, and he was very impactful. He had the partially blocked punt, which unfortunately, still went for 31 yards, but he also almost had a couple of other punt blocks. He was in the backfield a lot. He made the two big plays at the end of the half. Getting the tackle on the run play, I think on second down, and then getting into the backfield and forcing Jaden Daniels to panic and end up with an intentional grounding that ended a scoring opportunity that could have made the final score even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Abdul Carter looked like the real deal. The only other thing I was going to say about the offensive line quickly, I think we can, we talked a little bit about the defense at the top. I think we can probably let that go. Is I do wonder when we think about the interior of the offensive line, just about the only option that the Giants might have, because they've clearly moved on from Evan Neal. When they drafted Marcus Bowe, everybody considered him a potential 5-position player. The Giants used him all spring and all summer at tackle, which is his natural, position collegiately. But I do wonder if behind the scenes in practice, now I do wonder if they're beginning to use him a little bit inside at guard. I do wonder if maybe we will see him on the interior at some point this season, as the Giants try to solve that. Because as you said, they basically have to rebuild the interior of that line from scratch at the end of this season. So I wonder if they will move Bowe inside and try to start that process early.
Yeah, and so I guess I see that's the question Mark Thompson is asking, and that might be a great solution. I mean, he did play a decent amount of guard in college, and I think that was probably always Plan B for. I'm guessing that was a Plan B for Marcus Bowe, that they wanted to see if he could play tackle in the NFL, and if he couldn't, they'd play him at guard because he has experience at both. Whether he's ready to start at either of those positions, who knows? But if things continue this way, again, I don't think with Runyon, I think they'd be more reluctant to sit Runyon down. That's just my guess, that the one he might replace is Van Roten, and Van Roten himself, I mean, he might be a candidate to should take snaps at center if they think they've got to sit John Michael Schmitz. I mean, as a second round draft pick, I feel like they have to stick with JMS at least part of the season. But I also think that if we're seeing this type of offensive line play week after week after week, I have to think by the end of September. I have JMS in the same category that I have Russell Wilson. That I think the end of September is kind of the end of the leash for both of those players. That if things aren't improving, that's when the team will try to make a move.
I do think, let's finish up with a quick Russell Wilson Jackson Dart thing. And I do think it was very, very interesting and telling that given two opportunities in his press conference on Sunday afternoon to affirm that Russell Wilson would remain as the starting quarterback, at least in week 2, Brian Daboll did not definitively say Russell Wilson is our starting quarterback. He said, it's just after the game. I want to go back and evaluate the tape, which means he's thinking about it. The leash on Russell Wilson is not long. And again, yesterday was not entirely Russell Wilson's fault. But what's going to happen here, at least in my view, is if we continue to look at that type of offense, whether it's good for Jackson Dart's career or not, whether it's a good idea or not for Jackson Dart, Brian Daboll's going to understand that his job is on the line. And the guy he's tied to is Jackson Dart. He's not going to watch his head coaching career go up in flames without getting Jackson Dart on the field to try to do something about it, sooner rather than later. That's just the way I see it. How about you?
Yeah, and I have to admit, if I were in Brian Daboll's place and I was up there facing reporters who were trying to get me to say something about who's gonna play quarterback, I wouldn't give you anything about that, right? I mean,
Right.
I'd want to leave my options open so that I can make a decision when I want to make a decision, and I wouldn't want to say, "Oh, yes, he's our starting quarterback," and then decide a week later that now I want to make a change, and then he's got to say, "But you said he was your quarterback," So I think I understand what Daboll is answering when he's answering. He just doesn't want to commit to anything. Certainly, he has to be thinking about it because every indication that we saw from training camp is that he loves Jackson Dart and he thinks that Jackson Dart is going to be really good, and he wants to develop him and he wants to get him on the field. I think he feels all those things about Jackson Dart, and he's just, I think, resisting doing it as long as he can to give Dart some kind of a chance to develop enough so that he can play well. And of course, you have to think also, if I really think my offensive line is this bad, do I really want to throw him to the wolves that way? You saw what it did to David Carr early in his career. Frankly, I think you saw what it did to Daniel Jones too. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and when you go out there and you don't have faith in the guys in front of you blocking for you, it changes your mindset about things. And I think you don't want to do that with a young quarterback. You want a young quarterback going out there feeling like he can try to do what he wants to do. And so if the line is really terrible, then putting him out there, I'm not sure if it retards his development as much as it helps.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, at some point, hopefully maybe Daboll can wait until Andrew Thomas is in the lineup, but I think that it's probably been sooner than we thought it would. But we'll see. Hopefully it gets better. Tony, I think that's a good place for us to call it a day. Hopefully we have something a little better to talk about a week from now.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not counting on it. because the Giants in Dallas is not something that I usually anticipate as being a great week to watch Giants football.
I hear you. All right, Tony, thank you very much, Giants fans. Thank you as always. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.